When the weight of your days feels heavier than your strength, and the corridors of your life seem to echo with unanswered prayers, something sacred begins to stir beneath the surface. Not in the noise of your fears, not in the chaos of your circumstances, but in that quiet chamber where God reshapes destinies without asking permission from the storms that tried to break you. There comes a moment when heaven leans toward you, when the invisible hand that held you in your darkest nights begins to rearrange the very ground beneath your feet. And you may not see it yet, but the shift has already started. What felt delayed is gathering speed. What felt denied is turning in your favor. What felt impossible is bending toward your name, as if commanded by a higher law. You must understand something vital. God does not enter a story to leave it unchanged. When He moves, the atmosphere alters, shadows lose their grip, walls that once towered over you begin to crumble under the weight of His intention. He takes the same life that others dismissed, overlooked, or wounded, and breathes such force into it that even the scars begin to shine. And just when you assume you are standing still, He reveals that He has been building momentum inside your silence. The shift happens long before the evidence arrives. What you are feeling now, the restlessness, the stirring, the strange pull in your spirit, is the whisper before the miracle. It is the holy discontent that rises when God prepares to lift you out of the version of life that tried to convince you that you were ordinary. You were never ordinary. That is why the struggle felt personal. That is why the enemy invested so much energy into exhausting you. He saw the favor forming long before you could name it. There are seasons when God allows you to be pressed so that you can be positioned. Seasons where the night feels longer, not because you are forgotten, but because the dawn being crafted for you needs a fuller brightness than any you have known. And when the dawn breaks, it will not simply lighten your path, it will illuminate your purpose. God is not giving you a small shift. He is preparing a transformation so profound that the people who thought they understood your limits will not recognize your future. And understand this: favor is not something you chase. It is something God releases when the time is right. It moves like a river that refuses to be dammed up by human opinions, delays, or betrayals. Once God commands it toward your life, no force can divert it. You are stepping into that river now, into a season where doors you never knocked on will open, where opportunities you never planned for will find you, where blessings that were tied up in spiritual battles will suddenly fall into your hands, as if heaven has been saving them for this very hour. Your reality is not just shifting, it is being rewritten. The same God who turned deserts into highways, who raised what was thought finished, who restored what seemed beyond repair, that God is leaning over your story, and His breath is enough to turn resistance into access, sorrow into strength, and delay into unstoppable favor. The winds are changing direction. Everything that once worked against you is about to work for you. The grace coming towards you has the strength to overturn the very things that tried to collapse you. Walk forward now with a steady heart. The ground you are stepping into has already been claimed by divine power. The shift has begun, and nothing in this world can halt what God has already decided will rise in your name. When God begins a shift in your life, it rarely announces itself with thunder. It begins as something subtle, almost imperceptible, like the faint tremor beneath the earth before a great mountain moves. You stand in seasons that feel painfully still, seasons where nothing seems to advance, nothing seems to change, and you begin to question whether heaven has gone quiet. Yet it is precisely in these silent hours that the greatest transformations are born. God is a master of the unseen. His work does not begin when you witness results. It begins long before, in realms your eyes cannot reach, in moments your understanding cannot interpret. What you call delay is often divine construction. What you perceive as stagnation is God gathering the pieces of a future that must be assembled with the precision of eternity. There are prayers you whispered years ago that seem to vanish into unanswered skies, but God never abandoned a single one. They were stored, timed, aligned and woven into something far larger than the moment you prayed them. He does not respond with haste. He responds with perfection. When you think nothing is happening, everything is happening. You see only the surface of your story, but God is shaping the roots. And roots must grow in hidden places before they break open the soil. This is the truth many forget. The miracle starts beneath the ground, long before the flower appears. Most people only celebrate the emergence, forgetting the secret labor of the seed. But God has been working in your seed, your tears, your faith, your pain, your perseverance, long before the bloom. You have walked through seasons where your strength emptied out faster than your hope could refill it. You have survived nights where your faith felt like a fragile thread, and still you woke up. Still you prayed. Still you whispered a quiet, "God, I'm trying." You did not know it then, but every attempt to rise, every effort to believe, every moment you resisted collapse was laying the foundation for the shift God already set in motion. The human heart assumes progress is only real when visible, but heaven operates in reverse. What is invisible becomes the most powerful. What is hidden becomes the most enduring. What is delayed becomes the most transformative once released. There are blessings that cannot arrive prematurely, because premature blessings destroy unprepared hearts. God saw the battles you were not ready for, the weight you could not yet bear, the opportunities that would have crushed rather than lifted you. So he waited. He hid certain doors until your hands grew strong enough to turn the handles. He withheld certain victories until your character grew deep enough to protect them. And while you mistook the silence as abandonment, God was safeguarding your destiny. The shift had already begun, but it was still taking shape in the realm of preparation. He was not denying you. He was defending you. Think of a sunrise. You do not see the first light at the moment it begins. Long before dawn touches the horizon, the sun has already risen, just out of sight. You stand in the dark and assume morning is far, yet the brightness is already moving toward you. God's shift is like that. It begins before you ever recognize its approach. You feel restless without knowing why. You become tired of what once satisfied you. Your soul becomes thirsty for something unnamed. This is not confusion. It is spiritual foreshadowing. God is telling your spirit, prepare. What you asked for is on the way. Before the blessing comes, He changes your appetite. Before the opportunity arrives, He changes your perspective. Before the door opens, He changes your walk. The inner shift always precedes the outer one. And here is the mystery. Even the obstacles that appeared to block your path were part of the shift, forming behind the scenes. The rejection that wounded you redirected you. The delay that exhausted you refined you. The people who walked away created space. God does not waste the pain He allows. He bends it into purpose until the very things meant to break you become the evidence that He was building you. Long before you saw improvement, He was laying the bricks of your breakthrough. Long before you recognized the change, heaven had already reshaped the ending. You are not forgotten. You are being positioned. You are not abandoned. You are being aligned. The shift did not start today. It started the moment God decided your suffering had served its purpose. And now, what was hidden is preparing to break into your reality with unstoppable favor. When God steps into the narrative of a person's life, His presence does not merely add something, it transforms everything. His involvement is not a gentle adjustment, but a holy disruption. There is no such thing as God entering a story and leaving it as he found it. He is not a guest. He is the great architect who rearranges foundations. And often the first sign of his movement is not visible change, but the quiet collapse of things that were never meant to stay. The relationships that once held you tightly begin to loosen. The environments that felt comfortable suddenly feel too small. The fears that enslaved you begin to tremble under a force they cannot name. His presence alters the atmosphere long before it alters the circumstances. Many people imagine divine intervention as thunder and lightning, yet it often arrives as a gentle stirring inside you, an unfamiliar strength, a sudden courage, a new resilience that doesn't match the old you. This is the evidence that God has begun his work. He dismantles what is fragile so he can build what is eternal. He breaks chains so he can teach you to walk freely. He quiets the noise so he can reveal the truth. What once intimidated you begins to lose power. What once towered over you begins to shrink in the light of his intention. God's presence is not passive. It is a force that reshapes everything it touches. You may look at your life and wonder why certain things have fallen apart, why doors closed, why people drifted, why peace was interrupted. But what feels like chaos is often the beginning of divine order. When God enters a situation, the false structures must collapse, illusions must shatter, hidden motives must surface. You cannot carry deception into a future he has blessed. So he exposes what you were unable to see. He removes what you were afraid to release. He interrupts what you would have settled for. It may feel painful, but it is purposeful. His presence does not accommodate what was built on shaky ground. It rebuilds the ground entirely. And as this shift unfolds, you begin to see small signs, subtle but undeniable, that something has changed within you. The words that once wounded you lose their sting. The opinions that once controlled you begin to fade in relevance. The storms that once shook you no longer have the authority to define your peace. This is not because life has become easier, but because God has expanded your spirit. He strengthens your inner world before he transforms your outer one. He fortifies your heart before he lifts your life. You start to carry a quiet confidence, one you cannot fully explain. It is not pride. It is the awareness that you are no longer walking alone. When God enters your story, darkness loses its familiarity. Old fears feel foreign. Old patterns feel tight. Old cycles refuse to restart. Something unseen begins to push you forward. Even when you are tired, you keep moving. Even when you feel discouraged, hope rises again. Even when the path seems uncertain, you sense a guiding hand leading you with precision. God works from the inside out, dismantling the lies you believed about yourself and replacing them with truth that holds the weight of heaven. And once truth enters, it begins to rearrange every room of your soul. This is why people who once underestimated you will no longer understand you. They will see the changes before you fully comprehend them. They will notice your strength before you recognize its growth. They will feel your resilience before you claim it. God alters the fragrance of a person's spirit when he chooses to elevate them. You can no longer remain at the level where others left you. His presence lifts, reshapes, refines, and redirects. What once broke you no longer has permission. What once tempted you no longer has appeal. What once defined you no longer matches who you are becoming. And then, slowly, the outer world begins to shift to match the inner one. Opportunities align themselves where rejection once stood. Peace settles where anxiety once lived. Favor begins to flow where dryness once lingered. You begin to see that God was not adding blessings, He was preparing you to carry them. He was not adding favor, He was expanding your capacity to receive it. He was not adding strength, He was awakening the strength that was buried beneath years of doubt. This is the nature of God's presence. It changes you first, so your life can change next. It turns weakness into wisdom, fear into courage, and brokenness into testimony. When God steps into a story, the story can no longer remain the same. The shift becomes unstoppable, not because of your power, but because of His. That stirring inside you, the restlessness you cannot name, the quiet ache that something more is coming, the sense that you no longer fit inside the old version of your life is not a coincidence. It is the whisper before the miracle. It is the soft knock of God upon the door of your spirit, urging you to awaken to a transformation that has already begun. People often assume restlessness is a sign of confusion. But in the language of heaven, it is often the first sign of alignment. God rarely announces breakthroughs with trumpets. He begins with tension, with discomfort, with a holy dissatisfaction that tells you the season you've known is ending and the one you were made for is approaching. As the sentence opens up, one of Provost's Ecclesia prison programs, a mad, terrifying, there are moments when your heart feels unsettled, even though nothing around you has visibly changed. Your routines begin to feel too small. Your comfort zones begin to feel suffocating. The dreams you once silenced begin to rise again. This inward movement is the earliest evidence that God is preparing to elevate you. Before He shifts your circumstances, He shifts your desires. Before He opens new doors, He awakens new hunger. Before He brings the blessing, He reshapes the vessel that must carry it. And so your soul begins to stretch, making room for what it has not yet received but already senses. This restlessness is not a sign that you are lost. It is a sign that you are being led. It is God refusing to let you settle for a life smaller than the one He designed for you. It is His way of stirring the waters within you so you no longer cling to the shores that once felt safe. You begin to feel a deeper pull, a pull away from distractions, away from noise, away from the places where your spirit has been starved. You may not understand it, but the shift is already underway. God is loosening your attachments to old identities, old expectations, and old limitations, so that you can rise without carrying the weight of things that cannot follow you into your next season. Many people mistake this stirring for emotional turbulence. They think they are merely overwhelmed, exhausted, or dissatisfied. But the truth is more profound. Your spirit is hearing a call your mind has not yet translated. It is responding to a destiny that is approaching you with greater speed than you imagined. You may feel pulled in different directions, unsure what to hold on to, unsure what to release. That is because God is gently removing your grip from the places that no longer serve your growth. The inner tension is simply the friction between who you have been and who you are becoming. This restlessness is also a sign of healing. God often prepares you for breakthrough by making you uncomfortable with the things that once wounded you. What used to tempt you begins to lose its appeal. What used to break you no longer has the same power. What used to silence you now awakens your voice. You begin to outgrow the environments that once felt like home. This growing discomfort is not punishment, it is preparation. A seed cannot remain buried forever. Once it reaches a certain point of maturity, the soil that once protected it becomes the very thing it must break through. Your spirit is pushing against the soil now. You may find yourself longing for something you cannot yet describe, a deeper peace, a greater purpose, a life that reflects the value you had to learn through tears. This longing is not emptiness. It is expectation. It is the spiritual echo of what God has already planned. Your desires are being aligned with His timing. Your hunger is being aligned with His path. Even in your uncertainty, the divine orchestration continues, guiding you inch by inch toward the life that was written for you long before you ever felt the tug toward it. In the quiet moments, those moments where you feel your heart leaning towards something unseen, pay attention. That is the language of heaven speaking into your soul. That is God preparing you for doors you did not know existed. That is the whisper of favor gathering itself around your name. This inner stirring is not a random emotion. It is a spiritual signpost. It is the gentle beginning of a divine shift that will eventually reveal itself in ways that leave you breathless. You are being guided, shaped, awakened, and though you may not see the full picture yet, the whisper within is proof that the miracle has already begun its journey toward you. The intensity of your battles was never a reflection of your weakness. It was a reflection of your worth. You were not targeted because you were fragile. You were targeted because you were chosen. The storms that gathered around you were not random clouds drifting across your sky. They were deliberate attempts to extinguish a light that heaven intended to shine. Long before you recognized the calling on your life, the forces that opposed you sensed it. They saw the seeds of favor God planted in you, seeds you had not yet discovered, seeds you would eventually grow into. And so the attacks came early, came hard, came repeatedly, not because you were insignificant, but because you were destined. Look back on the moments where the weight of life felt unbearable, where you wondered why the enemy seemed so invested in your downfall. You were not imagining it. The pressure was real, but so was your purpose. The darker the attack, the brighter the future it tried to prevent. The enemy does not waste energy on places where nothing is growing. He seeks the fertile ground, the rising heart, the soul that carries heaven's imprint. He saw the future breakthroughs hidden in your persistence. He saw the influence you would one day hold. He saw the lives you would impact. And he feared the very thing you were too wounded to recognize. You were becoming someone powerful. Those battles did not come to ruin you, though they tried. They came to exhaust you, distract you, distort your identity so that you would forget who you were meant to be. Every whispered lie, every betrayal, every hardship carried a single intention: to convince you to quit before you discovered what God hid inside you. But here you stand, bruised perhaps, but unbroken, tired perhaps, but not defeated. And your endurance is the clearest testimony of your calling. If you had not been destined for something extraordinary, the resistance against you would have been mild, forgettable, ordinary. But a person marked by heaven never walks through ordinary battles. Think of the people who walked away from you for reasons that made no sense. Think of the seasons where you were surrounded by tension without knowing why. Think of the doors that closed just as you were about to step through them. These were not coincidences. They were strategic attempts to weaken the foundation of your faith. The enemy knew that if he could make you question your worth, you would stop reaching for your future. If he could make you drown in discouragement, you would stop hearing the quiet voice of God guiding you. But what he underestimated was the resilience that suffering produces. The kind of resilience that becomes unshakable when God breathes strength into a weary soul. Some of your greatest pain came from the hands of those you trusted most, and that was not accidental. The enemy often uses proximity to cause the deepest injury, because he knows distant wounds heal quickly, but wounds inflicted by loved ones can linger and poison the spirit. Yet even in this, God had a hidden purpose. For every person who broke you, God strengthened you. For every person who tried to diminish you, God increased you. For every closed heart that left you standing alone, God expanded your capacity to stand with him. The betrayals that were meant to destroy you became the very tools that carved you into the person you were meant to be. If the enemy had truly understood what those battles would create in you, he would have left you alone. Because every attack that was supposed to weaken you ended up revealing strength you didn't know you had. Every night you cried became a night where God stitched your soul back together with deeper wisdom, deeper compassion, deeper fire. And now, what once threatened to drown you has taught you how to walk on water. What once frightened you has taught you courage. What once overwhelmed you has taught you to lean on God in ways you never would have imagined. The enemy's greatest mistake was that he fought you before you knew your power. In trying to break you, he revealed you. In trying to stop you, he pushed you. In trying to silence you, he awakened something in you that cannot be silenced anymore. All the battles you faced were the evidence of a destiny he feared, a favor he could not block, a calling he could not erase. He saw the future shaping itself around your life and knew that if you ever discovered who you truly were, nothing in his arsenal would be able to stop what God planned. And now you are beginning to understand what heaven knew all along. The battles you faced were not proof that you were weak. They were proof that you were chosen, protected, and destined for a future that terrified the enemy long before you stepped into it. There are seasons in your life where everything feels painfully tight, as though the world is pressing in on every side, and your heart bears a weight too heavy to name. It is in these seasons that God is not punishing you, but positioning you. The pressure does not come to break you. It comes to shape you. There are things God intends to do through you that require a depth, a resilience, a clarity you could not develop in ease. Comfort rarely produces strength. Predictability rarely awakens purpose. So God allows certain seasons to feel like stretching, like being pulled beyond what you thought you could endure, all because he is preparing you for a path that demands more from you than the past ever required. When you find yourself pressed, it is a sign that something within you is expanding. The soul does not stretch without discomfort. Growth is not quiet. Transformation is not gentle. You may feel like you cannot breathe under the weight of responsibilities, heartbreaks, disappointments, or unanswered questions. Yet underneath that pressure, God is molding you into someone capable of carrying what he has prepared for your future. You are not being crushed, you are being reshaped. The space that once felt sufficient is no longer large enough for who you are becoming. Think about how gold is purified. It is not polished gently with a cloth. It is placed into fire, and not because the gold is worthless, but because it is valuable. Fire does not destroy the gold. It destroys what does not belong to it. In the same way, the pressure in your life is removing what cannot go with you into the next season. Old fears, old patterns, old attachments, old versions of yourself that were too small for the destiny God is crafting. You may not see it now, but with every moment you feel stretched beyond your limit, God is burning away what would have held you back. In those seasons of pressure, the instinct is to pray for escape. But sometimes God does not remove you from the pressure because the pressure is doing the very work you asked him to do. You prayed for strength, so he allowed situations that forced you to develop it. You prayed for wisdom, so he permitted experiences that required discernment. You prayed for deeper faith, so he guided you through valleys where faith became your only light. The pressure is the classroom, where your spirit learns what comfort could never teach. It is where you discover your own endurance. It is where you learn that God can hold you even when everything else around you feels unstable. And this positioning is not random. It is intentional. God sees what is ahead, even when you only see what is now. He knows the magnitude of the blessings, responsibilities, and breakthroughs waiting for you. He knows the strength you will need to stand in places you have never stood before. If He allowed you to enter those future seasons without preparation, the weight of the blessing could overwhelm you. Elevation without foundation is collapse. Favor without character is fragile. Breakthrough without resilience is temporary. So God strengthens you in the shadows, long before He amplifies you in the light. During these pressure-filled seasons, you may also notice that the things which once satisfied you no longer do. What once felt like home now feels too small. What once fit your spirit now feels tight. This is because God is stretching your capacity. He is enlarging your vision, widening your perspective, deepening your understanding. The discomfort is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are growing. Just as a tree must push against the soil to rise, you must push against the pressures around you to step into the fullness of your identity. Pressure also reveals truth. It exposes who is truly with you, who supports you only in ease, and who cannot endure the weight of your transformation. It shows you the relationships built on loyalty and those built on convenience. It reveals what matters and what doesn't. It refines your priorities until only the essential remains. And though this revelation may feel painful, it is protection. God is clearing your path of people and things that would hinder the strength He is building within you. If you could see how carefully God is positioning you, you would understand why the pressure has been so intense. You would realize that every challenge, every delay, every closed door was not a rejection, but a redirection. You are not stuck. You are being prepared. You are not forgotten. You are being shaped. And the place where you feel most pressed today is the very place where God is preparing to elevate you tomorrow. Favor does not rush toward the person who chases it frantically. It arrives quietly for the one who is aligned with God's timing. Many people exhaust themselves trying to force open doors that were never meant to move by human effort. They push, strive, and struggle, believing that favor must be earned with intensity. But divine favor is not something you capture. It is something that finds you when the moment is right. It moves with a rhythm that is not controlled by fear, impatience, or desperation. It flows at the pace of heaven, not the timeline of human anxiety. And when God decides your season has come, you will not need to beg for access. What belongs to you will come with the ease of something predestined. The unfolding of favor often begins in stillness. You may reach a point where you are tired of striving, tired of trying to make life bend to your will, tired of feeling like every step forward requires a battle. In this quiet exhaustion, something extraordinary happens. The soul becomes receptive. The noise of your own solutions fades, and the space for God's intervention enlarges. You are not giving up. You are surrendering. You're releasing the illusion that everything depends on your strength. And the moment you stop forcing what isn't ready, God begins to release what is. Favor has a way of moving toward people who no longer need validation from the world. When you stop proving yourself, the right people begin to see you. When you stop chasing approval, the right opportunities begin to notice you. When you stop trying to earn love, the relationships meant for you begin to appear. It is almost paradoxical. Favor arrives when you stop chasing it. It follows the one whose heart is aligned with purpose rather than panic. This shift inside you becomes a magnet for blessings you could never have achieved by human force. Many misunderstand God's timing and think delay means denial, but delay often means preparation. While your eyes search for progress, heaven is assembling something larger than your request. The strength you develop in waiting becomes the foundation for the blessings you will soon carry. If you received favor too early, it might slip through your fingers. If you entered certain rooms before maturity shaped you, those rooms might suffocate you. If favor requires wait, and that wait is built in seasons where nothing seems to be happening, you are not being stalled, you are being strengthened. When favor finally arrives, it does not tiptoe into your life, it enters with a sudden clarity, as if pieces long scattered finally snap into place. The place where you once heard no becomes a place where your name is requested. The opportunity that once ignored you begins to seek you out. The path that was blocked starts opening without effort. You do not push the door open, it opens of its own accord, because God is the one turning the handle. And when He opens something for you, no person, no system, no force can shut it. What makes this favor unstoppable is not its speed, but its source. Anything built on human opinion can crumble with a single shift in mood. Anything dependent on the approval of others can be lost the moment they change their mind. But what God releases carries permanence. It is rooted in His intention, not your performance. You don't walk into it by impressing people. You walk into it by being faithful in private, by holding on to integrity when no one is watching, by trusting God when everything around you feels uncertain. Favor recognizes the heart that has been refined by trials and chooses it. In this new season, the blessings meant for you will not require manipulation or competition. You will not need to fight for recognition because God Himself will highlight you. You will not need to demand opportunities because they will arrive with your name already written on them. Your spirit will feel a peace that confirms this favor is not random, it is assigned. And once it begins to flow, it does not trickle, it gathers, intensifies, overflows. You will wonder how long heaven had been preparing it, waiting for your heart to reach the posture that could hold it. When God releases favor, it reshapes the landscape of your life effortlessly. It aligns people, places, and moments without you lifting a hand. The battles you once fought in exhaustion will now resolve themselves. The doors you once jiggled with frustration will swing open. The opportunities that once felt distant will suddenly sit before you, as if they had been waiting for your arrival. Favor becomes the river that carries you, no longer the weight you push uphill. God leads it toward you in the exact moment your spirit is ready, and once it finds you, nothing on earth can divert its course. Your life is not drifting aimlessly, even if some seasons have felt like wandering through uncertainties you did not choose. What is unfolding now is not a random sequence of events. It is a divine rewriting of your reality. God does not simply adjust your circumstances. He transforms the entire narrative. When He intervenes, the old patterns lose their authority. The definitions others placed on you dissolve. The limits you once accepted begin to crumble. You start to feel, in quiet ways, that the chapter you've been living was never the ending, but merely the setup. God is not modifying your past. He is reauthoring your future. This rewriting often begins with the subtle realization that you cannot return to who you once were. People may expect you to be the version of yourself they remember, the one who tolerated disrespect, carried burdens silently, or lived according to the expectations of others. But that version no longer fits. Something inside you has shifted. You sense a pull toward higher purpose, deeper strength, and a clearer understanding of your worth. You can feel God separating you from old identities and guiding you toward a self you have not fully met yet. This internal transformation is not accidental, it is intentional. Divine rewriting means your story is no longer governed by the mistakes you made or the pain you endured. God takes the fragments of your broken chapters and weaves them into wisdom that strengthens your steps forward. The experiences that once made you feel unworthy become the very tools that shape your resilience. The losses that hollowed you out now become the space where new blessings will take root. God does not erase your past to give you a new future. He redeems your past to empower your future. What once wounded you now deepens your capacity to rise. This shift becomes more noticeable when the things that once held power over you begin to lose their grip. The fears that used to paralyze you weaken under the light of divine clarity. The emotional wounds that once defined your decisions begin to heal. You find yourself reacting differently, thinking differently, choosing differently, not because life got easier, but because God expanded your inner world. You outgrew the very chains that once held you. The rewriting is happening at the level of identity, changing not just what you do, but who you are becoming. As God rewrites your future, He also rearranges the paths in front of you. Opportunities you would have once overlooked suddenly resonate with your spirit. People who were once central to your life fade quietly into the background. New connections appear. Individuals who speak to your purpose rather than your pain. Doors that were shut for years now open without force. Doors that once looked appealing now close because God knows they would limit your growth. This rearranging is not chaos, it is orchestration. You are being aligned, not abandoned. A rewritten reality also means that the obstacles you once feared are losing their authority. Where you previously saw mountains, you now sense pathways. Where you once saw impossibility, you begin to perceive potential. Where you once felt outnumbered, you now feel supported by something unseen. God shifts the way you perceive challenges, so that your heart is no longer overwhelmed by what confronts you. You begin to understand that every difficulty is a doorway, every delay is a redirection, and every setback is a setup for what God intends to reveal next. In this unfolding reality, blessings come with meaning, not just abundance. You are no longer drawn to temporary fixes or superficial victories. You hunger for the things that align with your spirit. Peace, purpose, depth, fulfillment. God is teaching you to value what heaven values. Your life is being rewritten to reflect a richer story, one that carries the weight of transformation rather than the fragility of old wounds. You begin to crave the future He is preparing for you more than the past you struggled to preserve. The most beautiful part of this rewriting is that it does not rely on your perfection. God does not wait for you to have flawless faith or unshaken confidence. He moves even through your doubts, even through your fears, even through your trembling attempts to trust. He writes His strength into your weakness. He writes His clarity into your confusion. He writes His promise into your uncertainty. The new path you are stepping into is not fragile. It is fortified by divine intention. And as your story continues unfolding, you will see that every moment of your past was quietly preparing you for a future that carries God's fingerprints on every line. Unstoppable favor is not a quiet blessing. It is a force that shifts the entire landscape of your life. When God decides that the season of resistance has served its purpose, the very things that once stood against you begin to crumble under the weight of His will. You may not have seen the shift when it began, but you will feel it as it unfolds. The obstacles that once intimidated you will start losing their power. The doors that refused to open will begin to move. The people who underestimated you will no longer hold the influence they once had. Something in the atmosphere changes, and though your eyes may not fully understand it yet, your spirit knows that God has spoken a new direction over your life. The beauty of unstoppable favor is that it does not depend on your performance. It does not arrive because you impress the world or because you manage to navigate life perfectly. It arrives because God chooses the moment when favor must flow. It is a divine decision, not a human negotiation. When God commands it, everything created must respond. Even the resistance that once drained you will begin to work for you. Situations that look like setbacks will suddenly turn into stepping stones. People who walked away will unknowingly make room for what God is bringing next. What the enemy designed to break you becomes the very reason you rise. You might recall seasons where you begged for breakthrough, only to be met with silence. Those were not seasons of rejection. They were seasons of preparation. God knew that if favor rushed too quickly into your life, you might not have had the strength, wisdom, or discernment to carry it. But now something has changed. You have grown in ways you may not recognize. You have learned to stand, not because circumstances were kind, but because God sustained you. Every tear you cried became part of the foundation you are standing on now. Every disappointment refined your spirit. Every hardship prepared your heart. And now that the refining has produced its strength, favor can finally flow without being wasted. When this favor arrives, it will not come subtly. It will come with a clarity that silences every lie the enemy whispered to you during your lowest moments. It will come with opportunities that appear too perfectly aligned to be accidents. It will come with breakthroughs that seem sudden but are actually the result of years God spent aligning the unseen. You will witness relationships restored, paths cleared, and doors opening that you thought were permanently sealed. You will realize that God was not delaying your blessing. He was perfecting the timing to protect your destiny. This unstoppable favor also carries a protective nature. It does not merely elevate you, it shields you. People who once had the power to harm you will find themselves unable to interfere. Plans that were created to undermine you will weaken before they can form. Conversations held in darkness about your downfall will collapse before reaching your ears. God's favor becomes a barrier around you, not just a blessing within you. It turns the schemes of the enemy into dust and transforms every weapon formed against you into nothing more than a shadow that never reaches your life. As this season unfolds, you may begin to notice that what once required extraordinary effort now flows with surprising ease. The stress you carried for years begins to dissolve. The confusion that clouded your decisions clears. The burdens that felt impossible to lift suddenly grow light. You move with a confidence that is not rooted in arrogance, but in divine assurance. You sense that you are no longer walking towards something, you are walking with something. It's sense that you are no longer walking towards something, you are walking with something. Favor does not follow you like a distant blessing, it surrounds you like a new atmosphere. And this change will not only impact you, the people connected to you will feel it as well. Those who stood with you in loyalty will find themselves blessed through your overflow. Those who encouraged you through tears will receive unexpected answers to their prayers. God's favor spreads outward like ripples on water, touching everyone meant to walk with you in the next season. It is not just for your elevation, it is for the healing and strengthening of every life intertwined with yours. Ultrapisticity is about a conscious division of time. Eventually you will look back and see that nothing in your story was wasted. The pain became fuel, the loss became clearing, the betrayal became redirection. Every experience, even the ones you wished you could erase, prepared the ground for this new reality. And once God releases unstoppable favor, no human hand can block it, no enemy can intercept it, and no circumstance can reverse it. You step into a life that moves with divine momentum, a life where every step is aligned with God's intention, and every blessing carries the weight of heaven's approval. You are standing at the edge of a season that will not resemble the ones that came before it. All that you endured, all that you survived, all that you questioned, has brought you to this moment, where God's hand is no longer hidden. The shift you felt in whispers is becoming visible. The favor that was forming in silence is preparing to unfold in ways that will leave you humbled, grateful, and certain that none of it was accidental. Every battle, every delay, every restless night was shaping a story that could only be written by God Himself. Now, as you step forward, you are not stepping with the weight of who you were. You are stepping with the strength of who you've become. The winds that once pushed against you are turning to carry you. The mountains that once blocked your path are bowing under divine authority. The doors that felt sealed are unlocking with a gentleness that only heaven could orchestrate. You are walking into a reality touched by God's power, into a future carried by His favor, into a life reshaped by His intention. Let your heart rest in this truth. What is coming is greater than what was lost, stronger than what was broken, and more beautiful than what you prayed for. You are not stepping into chance. You are stepping into destiny. God has taken your story into His hands, and now nothing can stop the unfolding of the favor He has written for you.